Culture is the non-genetic information that is transferred from one individual in a species or from the collective elders of the species to the younger ones. To collectively transmit information, language or communication is a must. But communication happens in various ways. Language is a barrier that humans, as we understand, have cracked. But then communication has always existed in various organisms. So, even with humans, what is the first kind of communication that we had? We've had various perspectives, and there are cultural and linguistic anthropologists who look into ancient languages. The proof we have is mostly in the written form, that can only be taken as proof, and whatever existed in the non-written form has completely been lost. But then, even prior to that, when we look at different sources, we get different kinds of insights into what communication was like in the very early days. This is the secret of knowing who we are as an individual. To know who I am, I must know where I come from, what makes me me, what knowledge I have, and where it comes from. Where did knowledge originate in the first place? All knowledge we have is because of communication. We might have observation, but we will be more or less like any other primate on the planet without the help of communication. Communication is what makes individuals form larger groups, communicate, come upon agreed terms, and that is how governments have been framed, and that is how society runs. So without this fundamental notion of all of us abiding by one principle which can be communicated through communication, we have we did not have a chance to be the dominant species on Earth. So how does communication start? For this, since we do not have any other sources of information which explain the origins of communication, I would want to take you through scripture. What scripture says about that? This is the Rigveda Samhita. So, let us see what it says about the beginning of communication. How does communication come into play? In the very beginning, we get to see that there are two kinds of communication initially. So, paravak. Paravak or paraspeech was studied purely as a psychological phenomenon, though it was unarticulate speech or avyakta vak. It is also used to convey the speaker's intention. In modern communication, we do not convey the speaker's intention. We convey only the message. It was transmitted at the mental level or manomaya kosha, which means a person sitting at one place could transmit his message to another person sitting elsewhere through the dimension of the mind. It is not through any vibrations that create sound. It is not even articulated. This is the original form of communication that humans had. A person sitting at one place was able to transmit his message to another person sitting at another place through the mental waves or the waves of consciousness activated by the power of sankalpa, that is will. Just by willpower, the message I wish to communicate to you gets communicated. This is true communication. And from there, we see a continuous degradation. It is never true to believe that humans have continuously evolved from apes. We were lesser beings earlier. No, this was never the case. We have devolved, and there's more than enough scientific evidence to state and to prove that humans have continuously devolved and lost their true connections. So, with time, what happens is only the yogis or the rishis who completely master their mental faculties through concentration and contemplation are able to communicate through paravak. In modern times, communication has been made through wireless telephone, satellite controls. Communication through telepathy did not need a pipe or an infrastructure. Nothing was needed. This is the original form of communication. That kind of communication could happen between humans and the eternal consciousness, or between humans on different planets too. From one country to another country was much easier. So the second type of communication that we come across here is aparavak. Aparavak or vyaktavak, articulate speech, was studied as a physiological phenomenon. That is, the body gets involved here. Since the Vedic seers meant by aparavak or vyaktavak or articulate speech, before a speech is articulated at physiological level, that is through the vocal cord, it passes through two stages. First one being pashyanti, the visual state, where the visual imagination happens. At this stage, an individual with inquisitive perception visualizes some physical action in the objects or things around him. Like, I visualize reading in the book. Only then can I connect book with reading and then translate it to a sentence. At this stage, an individual with inquisitive perception visualizes some physical action in the things or objects around him in his own idiosyncratic way. At the second stage, that is at the stage of madhyama vak, the physical actions are imprinted in his mind in the form of pratyaya. The Vedic seer had it as tam madhyama vacha shamshati atmanameva tat samskrute. He appreciates the visualized object. Thus, by appreciating some object or thing, one registers the imprint of the action of visualized object in his mind in the form of some concept. In fact, pratyaya or concept can be called as a psychological action. Like, I psychologically, I first visualize the act of reading this book in my mind, then I register the act. I recognize the possibility of reading. That is a visualization. And reading is an act which I visualize. That is the second part. The concept is internal or psychological awareness that gets registered in the consciousness. It is often articulated in the form of sounds. Further, there is no such concept in the world as can be expressed or articulated without sound. All concepts or conceptualized actions are realized only by the way of sound, uttered by men or by animals. Thus, this process of conversion of actions into sounds is as follows. The first step is perception of action present in the object outside. Next, conceptualization of the subject action or concept formation in the mind. And this translates to articulation, that is vocalization or expression of concept into sounds or action sounds by perceiver. This process may be known as the conversion of psychological action into physiological action, that is the vocalized sound. The action words or sounds thus articulated or expressed in the very beginning were called by ancient linguists or etymologists as akhyatas, literally meaning expressed or articulated sounds. Akhyatas or action sounds embodied in them the concept of the action present in the outside object at the time of its perception. It was invariably described by ancient linguists or etymologists as bhava or action dominated. Bhava pradhanam akhyatam. Bhava pradhanam akhyatam. Madhva, the author of Dhatu Vritti, also takes bhava as meaning the concept behind the coining of the root. According to him, bhavastu kevalo dhatva artha. In fact, those akhyatas, actions, were the first type of articulate speech. So, actions become articulated into speech. Furthermore, it is also described that articulate speech is the least efficient or the illiterate man's way of communicating information. So, what we consider to be the dominant form of communication was considered as an illiterate man's method of communication. So, I guess we are getting into terms with the frame in which they are speaking. And in the next part, I will talk to you about what comes first. Is it adjectives, adverbs, verbs, or nouns? Okay, I've got that already. That I have already revealed that actions come first, which means verbs come first. But then how that translates into the different words that we use into names, all that will be revealed in the next video. Thank you. Have a nice time.